So the next speaker, Drew Jeter. Pleasure to have you with us, Drew. Drew is the CEO of AECOM's Global Program Management business line. And as you will know, AECOM is now the official infrastructure partner of the LA28. And that illustrates the capability that the organization is building and winning projects globally. What Drew will also share with us today is his extensive background in the US Air Force as a colonel and all the work he did that and how that led to program management later on, which is super interesting. And lastly, but definitely not least, as many of you will know, UCL and AECOM built a very innovative partnership to advance science in program management. And this is something that we are collectively very, very proud of. And we are supporting a new generation of researchers. We have one here with us today in this space and giving opportunities and mentorship to advance both science and also opportunities to connect back with AECOM's leadership. So essentially with the vision of advancing this space and putting some rigor, but also implementing in practice. So for us, it's not enough just to publish a paper at all. So it needs to be connected to the implications. So Drew, thanks very much, and over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Giuliano. I can't tell you how excited I am to be with you all today. You know, the MBA advisory board members who are here, you know, we talked about this day a year ago and kind of looking at the calendar and the overlap of the first cohort and the second cohort and being here at the same time. And we were kind of trying to target we normally meet as an advisory board about 3 times a year, and we were talked about meeting during that time frame. And then it's like, but how do we like interact with this, you know, with the students? And so out of that, you know, this day, the concept for this day was born, and it is awesome to be here with you and experience this. It's also rewarding for me to be here at this point in a journey that, you know, I met Giuliano about 10 years ago when he was a PhD student. And his passion that you see today, his dedication to evidence-based approaches, his mission of an industry that is so needing to change, that is based on, you know, real facts, not what we're comfortable doing, not what we've always been doing for decades as an industry. It's so cool to see how much progress has been made in the last decade, not just in his life, but all those who he and UCL have impacted. So speaking of that, so did you hear about the UCL MBA student who was walking across campus here, the East Campus, walked past a frog, and the frog called out, "If you kiss me, I'll turn into a prince." And so she looked down, she picked it up, and she put him in her pocket. She started walking. And the frog called out again, and he said, "If you kiss me, I'll turn into a prince, and I'll stay with you for a week." So she pulled him out of her pocket. She kind of looked at him, kind of smiled. She put him back into her pocket and kept walking. So now the frog's getting a little bit desperate. He calls out in a louder voice, muffled though, but from her pocket, but says, "If you kiss me, I'll turn back into a handsome prince, and I'll be your dedicated boyfriend." So she pulls him out of her pocket. She looks at him. She smiles. She puts him back in her pocket. And so the frog cries out. He says, "What's the matter? I told you that I'm a handsome prince. I'll be your dedicated boyfriend. Why won't you kiss me?" And she says to him, I'm a UCL MBA student. I have no time for a boyfriend. But a talking frog is really cool. So the content that I have to share with you today is not rocket science. It's not super cool, innovative stuff. It's really basic. But for us, and what we're trying to do from AECOM, it's foundational because some of what's wrong with our industry are the basics that we're not paying attention to. We're not changing our behaviors and how we behave and our alignments based on those foundations. And we're not doing it based on the evidence. And so again, kudos to UCL and Giuliano and folks who have been doing this research, because it has seriously impacted me. It's seriously impacted our direction of travel at AECOM. and the foundation for what we're trying to do and the how we're trying to do it in the industry. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit, just a little bit about myself, introduce myself, talk about AECOM a little bit. That is not a commercial about me being awesome or AECOM being awesome. That is, the reason for that is that, you know, my career journey is very different than Richard's or Leanne's or Nick's or Giuliano's. But it'll be really cool in the future when some of you all are up here and you get to, from your very different career journey, talk about how you got to the place that you got, and the why. And so, you know, I'm just going to share then, you know, about me. I'll also share about our organization a little bit. And again, a very different organization than KPMG or National Audit Office or UCL or the different organizations that Nick has helped to lead. But it is so powerful to see these different organizations and those that you represent coming together and aligning on some really important parts of this mission. And then I'll talk about some concepts that you're going to look at it and you'll say, yeah, I know that already. But again, I think that these basics, they're foundational and that we've got to continue to drive them in how we help deliver infrastructure brilliantly. So just a couple slides on me. You know, this kind of talks to my why. You know, I'm driven by kind of needing to be a part of something bigger than me, something important. I want to have a legacy. I want to leave an impact. I want what I do to make a difference. And for me, that definitely was something that drove me for my 23 years in the U.S. Air Force, but it's also why I do what I do at AECOM and why I love program management. I got a bachelor's in architecture, a couple of master's degrees, spent 23 years traveling around the world in the Air Force, planning, permitting, designing, procuring, constructing, all kinds of different things. It's cool because Air Force bases are like little cities. You know, they may only have 15, 20, 30,000 people, but, you know, you get to learn about water and power and comms and runways and housing. My first project was working for the base architect was to add 4 lanes to the base bowling center. And so, you know, you really do get exposed to kind of what it's like to kind of design and construct and manage a city. And I got to do that all over the world. Towards the end of my career as a colonel, I got to command a few bases, to include Edwards Air Force Base in Southern California. That's the second largest base in the Air Force. 300,000 acres, 20 runways. We had 100 aircraft. It was an awesome career. And then I got out and joined a company that doesn't exist anymore that was called CH2M Hill. And amongst it started out as a water company in the 1950s in the US from 4 former military veterans, but grew in a number of ways. And one of the things they became famous for was program management. They were ranked #1 in Engineering News Record for 12 years in a row in program management. Got to help deliver amazing, iconic jobs like the London Olympics and Crossrail and Palace Westminster R&R and Lower Thames Crossing and Thames Estuary Asset Management 2100, expansion of the Panama Canal, Mumbai Airport, just massive, amazing, cool projects. And so it was a great learning laboratory for me to learn program management. Left CH2M Hill when it was bought by Jacobs. And was there at Jacobs for about 2.5 years. Prior to that, Jacobs really wasn't a leader in program management. And I got a chance in those 2.5 years to help bed down that program management business in Jacobs before I left and joined a small company called Hill International, small global company. They don't do design and engineering, only about 3,000 or 4,000 people around the world, but they also do program management. And I thought, you know, I could do this for the rest of my career. And then AECOM called. They had a new CEO, and he described to me his vision for AECOM as a company. He said, you know, we're 50,000 people. Our tagline is that we're delivering a better world, but we're really not. We're kind of designing a better world. We're kind of engineering a better world. We're good at that. We do it in a lot of different sectors. We do it all over the world. But when, the clients with the biggest infrastructure investments need to deliver it, they don't really think about us. They might think about us to design it. And if we become the leader in the world in program management, it'll fundamentally change everything for us. It'll change how the industry sees us. It'll change how our clients see us. Because that CEO of that client organization, that $5 or $10 billion infrastructure investment is probably the biggest thing on their plate for their watch as a CEO. It'll change how top talent in the industry sees us. It'll change how our people at AECOM see ourselves as to what we're capable of doing. So I was sold. I apologized to Hill for only being there less than a year. And I took this job as he kind of talked about forming, for the first time in the industry, in a company our size, not just a program management capability, but a separate business unit, because he felt like it was that important. So one of the 5 global business lines of AECOM is program management. And he said, I think I'm the first one to do that. So that's what I do. I love what I do. I love getting up every day, tackling kind of the cool opportunities that we have globally and in AECOM and in program management. And our aspirations at AECOM, we've been very successful in the program management business. I joined 4 years ago. A week after I joined, Troy announced to the industry that we were going to double the business in 3 years. That was not something that came up in the interview process. I thought, oh gosh. It was almost $1 billion gross revenue business at the time. And I thought, there is no way. You just can't do that. Programs take so long to germinate. And, we have no pipeline because our company hasn't been focused on that really. And 3 years later, it's over a $2 billion business. We've been growing at about 25% a year. We have won 75 to 80% of the large jobs that we've bid on in the last 3 years. And if you ask me why tonight at the reception, I'll be happy to share that. But UCL has been a critical component of that because our approach is based on these facts and the foundation of reality. And it is different. What you all are approaching, it is different than the way our industry tends to behave. So as I mentioned, our tagline is delivering a better world. We actually feel like we're doing that now. It matters to us that what infrastructure investments do. They're not just projects. It's not just making money. It really is about impacting society. Society needs what you all are studying because these infrastructure investments are not primarily about construction. They are about huge, important outcomes that society needs. Here's our values, and these really matter to us. They're not just slogans on a website. They are connected to our DNA and our why, and we constantly hold each other accountable in that this is who we are. I was in an interview as one of the finalist firms with a few of the other firms that are represented in here with Mark Thurston last week for Anglian Water. And loved in that executive interview the 2 hours of getting a chance to talk about our why. And that's a part of how, they're getting ready to do something that's somewhat unprecedented in the water sector and looking for a delivery partner for the next 15 years. And so, the people who are in that room won't even be a part of this in 15 years. And how do we know that they're selecting the right team and that the approach is going to be something that will endure and be sustained for 15 years? You look at Tideway, and I got a chance to be a part of the Tideway story for about 10 of the 14 years or so of the delivery, and got to see that from inception, shortly after the business case, through the consents, and then bringing on an infrastructure provider, and and the different models that and the evolutions. The original delivery strategy was not how it ended. You talk to Andy Mitchell about how to finish a job right. And it's just amazing, over time, what you've got to go through. But your values, kind of don't change. Your sense of purpose that Leanne talked about, that these investments are about, doesn't change. And so you can change all the rest. You can change the people, the delivery strategies, procurement strategy. You can adjust your governance, but your values and the why, is critical. As I mentioned, program management became the 5th global business line. We just created a 6th global business line in our commitment to do more and more work in the advisory space and kind of leveraging then the #1 ranked, water and environment business that we've got, and really kind of trying to be purposeful about how we approach advisory with that capability. We got a lot of awards and #1 rankings. Program management was, I think, 6th when I got there, and now we're #2 and growing 25% a year. It's just a matter of time before we're pretty confident that we'll have a #1 ranking. A lot of awards. The one that I think is cool, besides our ethics and being an admired company, is last year Time Magazine recognized us as a company where leaders are being born. And we were the only firm from our industry that actually, we didn't submit something, we didn't nominate ourselves, submit some, they just looked across industry and said, where are the leaders in government and other spheres of society, and where are they coming from? And AECOM was on that list. And our vision for the long term, we primarily have been a design and technical consultant, but our vision for the future is that more and more of our identity will be as a complex integrator, and that includes program management, as well as an advisor. So thanks for letting me do the commercial. Now let's talk about program management. And when I talk about a program, you can interchange that for today's purpose with mega project, giga project. I'm talking about the same kind of sphere of levels of infrastructure investment. And so what is the place of program management from the supply chain view in today's world? And it starts with our clients. It is a tougher environment than it's ever been for our clients. 10, 15, 20 years ago, an infrastructure owner, whether it was in the public sector or the private sector, as they approached doing something like this, if they came close to delivering what they said, when they said, and within the budget that they said what was going to cost, that was success. That's not good enough anymore. Our clients, our infrastructure owners, they've got to do it in a way that reflects the intersection that happens. Most of these jobs happen in some sort of metropolitan area. And the intersectionality and the increasing pressures of urbanization are real. A water project used to just be a water project, or a transportation project but they're all kind of interconnected in a way that is just not that simple anymore. It's much more complex. And the expectations of the populace is that it's going to be done in a way that reflects the ultimate end game and the outcome for those who live and work in that metropolitan area. It's got to be digitally enabled. It's got to be environmentally and socially responsible. Clients up there at the top are kind of looking for models and approaches and contracting and ways to kind of access the supply chain that are different. And why is that? It's because what's been tried in the past has not worked. As Nick said, most of these jobs fail. Most of them fail. So that's kind of the starting place. And so this is a slide that the AECOM CEO shared about a month after I arrived at AECOM. And it was a meeting of our investors. And he said to them, "You all know us today as a day 3 firm." And he said, "I haven't referred to us that way before, but day 3 in the life of an infrastructure investment is projects. Projects that need to be designed and engineered, procured, and constructed." So, but way before that point in time, and that's what AECOM's been doing, way before that time in the life of an infrastructure investment, somebody's giving advice to our client about the reason for that project. On how to approach it, how to approach the planning of it and the financing of it. And so you're going to see us start to be much more active at AECOM in day 1. Basically, that's advisory. And then for the infrastructure investments that are large in scale and complex and programmatic in nature, then we hope to be their program manager to help them set up the program, out of which will flow lots of projects that we can still design and construct. And so that's the journey that we've been on at AECOM. Our approach to kind of how we view programs is somewhat different than some others. And it starts with the difference between project management and program management. And the reason, and you're going to look at this and say, "Yeah, I get it." But the reason that that's important is because the behaviors in our industry are still too tied to project management, as if that's kind of the main thing. And when you're talking about giga projects, mega projects, programs, it really isn't the main thing. So a project, a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product or service. Everybody gets project management. And not just folks in our industry. I mean, anybody on the street. I mean, everybody has at home some to-do list. Maybe it's paint your front door. That's a project. It has a scope. You're going to change the color, add protective coating to that front door. It has a schedule. You say, "Well, I'm going to do it Saturday after next. And I think it'll take me about half a day and I'll be able to do something else in the evening." And it has some budget. I got to buy some paint, a roller. It's going to cost me $50 or whatever that is. So everybody gets project management. And so it's an intuitive sort of thing, and it's something that's easy for human nature to gravitate towards managing things at that level, at the project level. Unfortunately, our industry treats programs as if they're primarily a list of projects where we can do lots of projects, lots of project management. And that really falls short of the mark. Going back again to the why, these are infrastructure investments. And as much as we love in our industry to do construction, to design stuff and build stuff, most of our clients actually are not spending all that money and time and effort because they love construction. They're doing it to achieve some different outcome, as a railway, as a water system, as a university campus. They're trying to achieve some outcome. There was some kind of business case that they sold to their board, to whoever their executive is, to the public. It took them years to kind of marshal the support to get everybody aligned to say, "Yes, we will spend £5 billion to achieve what you just sold us in that business case, that it is really important for society. It is really important for us as an entity, whoever that infrastructure owner is, and we'll make that investment." Unfortunately, the next step is that it gets close to our industry. And we say, an RFP comes out. When's the ITT or the RFQ or the RFP coming out, to kind of like do projects where we can kind of do our thing. And sometimes, the folks who are within the owner organization they're hiring people who come from our industry who kind of know how to do projects. And it's like, yes, we know how to do this. Out comes the tender document to do the kind of project management or program management services, and we start to kind of want to do projects. The business case is often then put in the closet, and off we go doing projects. And so for program management, if you treat a program as if it's projects, then what you're going to do is a lot of project management. And it's really important for it to stay a business case throughout the life of that infrastructure delivery. Because again, we said these things take 5, 10, 15 years. The people are going to change. The funding stream is going to change. The politics, the folks in government who are in office are going to change. A lot's going to change, but the business case didn't change. We're still trying to achieve that outcome. And so if you treat it like projects, you're just going to do lots of project management. And I would say that program management is fundamentally different than project management. It is actually not just doing project management, which it includes, but it's managing these resources and these important components across all of those projects. It's managing the space between the projects. It's how do you allocate your resources, manage the human capital and the risk and that across that collection of projects. How do you sequence those projects? What do some of them have in common that gives you an opportunity for a programmatic decision? What makes them different that then drives you to a sequencing or a prioritization decision? And that sort of management across the portfolio of projects is an inherently different exercise than project management, of delivering that scope, schedule, and budget of the individual components of the job that you still got to do brilliantly, but it's not the main thing. This is kind of based on an Olympic example. And just think about if you delivered 3/4 of, the venues successfully, but 1/4 of them didn't quite make it. The program's a failure. The first day of the games, if everything isn't ready, it's a failure because it's for an outcome. It's for a stunning event, right? And so you gotta stay focused on the outcomes, and everything that you do about how you set up the program needs to be based on the outcome. And so how we define a program at AECOM, and I haven't seen anybody else define it this way, is that it's an organization. It's the coming together of an organization with the owner in the center, the supply chain around that, stakeholders in there, the regulators, everybody who's got to come together in a way that's aligned to pull off those outcomes, to pull off the business case. We were heavily influenced in coming up with that definition by UCL and the research that Giuliano and the team did about 5 years ago in that award-winning paper. What are the causes and cures of mega project failure? And if you look at out of the over 6,000 documents that they researched through that effort, and the 6 common themes that they found in all the jobs that failed, none of those were things that we spend all our time on the engineering or the concrete, or all 6 of those main reasons that they fail were organizational in nature. It was poor decision-making behavior. It was a lack of alignment between your vision, your strategy, your governance, and your procurement strategy. It was inadequate risk management. It was a lack of engagement, proper engagement by leadership. It was inadequate stakeholder management and inadequate integration of the supply chain. Those are all organizational at some level issues. And so we treat a program as an organization, and it's about those outcomes. So on one slide, and I haven't shared this publicly before, because it's part of our secret sauce and with the AECOM way of program management that we've developed. But I wanted to share it today. Is that in one slide here is kind of basically the overall framework of the AECOM way of program management, and in the center is outcomes and the benefits, because that's always got to be in the center. It's got to, in everything that we do, it's always about why you organize that way, why is your governance set up that way, Why have you selected that procurement strategy? It's because of the outcome. It's because we've determined or guessed that the best way to procure, the best way to organize, the best way to govern is for that outcome is what we decided. Unfortunately, what you see is that all those decisions are made for other reasons. Well, because we've always done it that way, or because within our organization that kind of governance would not be allowed, or because we've never done this kind of procurement, or the reason that every single one of those questions should be because of that outcome and that benefit. Wrapped around that are our stakeholders. And sometimes we kind of trivialize the stakeholders. They don't necessarily at AECOM pay our bills. They're not our client, but they're called stakeholders for a reason. They have a stake. So they have an agenda. There are benefits that they get or impacts that from that infrastructure investment to them. And so it behooves us in the life of this 5, 10, 15-year thing where we want everybody to be aligned to appreciate everything through the stakeholder lens. And let's map that out as well. And let's see if to the extent we set this up, not just to meet the person who's the entity that's paying our bills is happy, but those stakeholders stay on board, don't decide to issue a lawsuit or fight the job, and be a part of the organization, a part of the team. And so the stakeholders are really important. And then all the processes, systems, procedures that we've developed, most of them based on best practice in industry, and again, the evidence. The first 3 categories are really advisory types of tools and frameworks and approaches. It's how you define a program. Sometimes we think, yeah, I get it. Here's the dollars. Here's the thing. Let's go. Kind of like Nick said, we want to get busy, And for us, we have a way of making sure we're seeing everything in how that program is defined before we get busy. Second is, how do you design that organization? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And thirdly, how do we assess up front the readiness of the owner organization and the stakeholders for this, where we're going to start, and how do we assess over time, our maturing, hopefully on a pace that meets what the need is of the program to stay on track with delivery. And then categories 4, 5, and 6 are really delivery. So it's a defined approach to initiation that starting is always chaotic. But in order to be efficient and effective, to not waste a lot of effort and money, there are lessons that can be learned from what not to do. And so we have a defined approach to initiation. Sue's going through that right now on LA 28. We're in our first 100 days, and I was pleased when she told me that she briefed the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, on our approach to that first 100 days, and they said, this is how you should do every games from now on. This should be the model. Number 5 is really kind of the program management plan, the approach to performance management. We really learned a lot of lessons from London 2012 and really felt like a lot of best practices came from there that still apply in many programs. And then 06 is our digital delivery system. We've invested a lot of money in cutting edge technology. So LA 28, and Sue can talk a little bit more about this afternoon in the panel. We started a couple months ago, and it says that we're the official venue infrastructure partner. The contract that we signed with them is for us to do all the design, all of the program management, and we will also serve as the contractor. AECOM Hunt is the #1 sports venue contractor in the U.S. We've built most of the NFL stadiums, most of the MBA arenas. AECOM Hunt has been involved in that, and so we have a lot of advantages in knowing the sports construction supply chain. This is a picture of the Intuit Dome. You saw a picture of the internal in that first video. We completed that a year ago, and we designed it and constructed it. That is the home of the LA Clippers basketball team, and that will be used during the Olympics. This is another one of the facilities that sports facilities in LA that we constructed. It's SoFi Stadium. It's where the LA Rams and the LA Chargers play, and it's amazing. And it'll also be used as as a part of the venue plan for LA 28. So talked about kind of organizations. And this is a very oversimplified chart but we found that it's easy for our clients to digest the range of when we talk about a delivery model. We can talk about delivery partners. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that can still be kind of a nebulous concept for a client who hasn't gone through something like that or hasn't seen what successful delivery partner looks like. And so this helps from kind of a client perspective understand the range of, if they're hiring a program manager, what that can look like, starting at the left-hand side where a client is going to control pretty much most of the approach. But all they need is some augmentation. They need extra bodies because this thing is much bigger than what they're used to doing, or they need some specific kind of expertise to be plugged in and added to their own organization. And so the staff augmentation approach sometimes actually, makes sense. Most of us in the supply chain don't love it. Some people call it bums and seats approach. We don't often get to have huge impact and really have a lot of value in what we supply. But sometimes it's the right model. New York City Department of Environmental Protection, I mentioned there, a water tunnel job that we worked on a number of years ago, some of us. The Department of Environmental Protection has 350 engineers, and they deliver billions in infrastructure. So they really did just kind of need unique kind of augmentation to help them be successful in that tunnel program. At the far right end, is kind of outsourcing all of kind of how you deliver it. I have London Olympics there. It's not quite that. It actually goes further than the amount of empowerment in 2012, but the amount of empowerment for the program delivery partner, the real first use of that concept in 2012, was very different, and hasn't been duplicated a lot since then. But that tends to show up when we're working for an investor, a developer, the private sector, an organization that doesn't have an engineering department. They say, hey, listen, here's who we are. We kind of need you to kind of do all the stuff that you need to do it, however you need to do it. Across the top, though, the owner is always the owner. They cannot delegate the ultimate decision-making of the investment. So as far as the amount of control that an owner has, they're in charge in all these models, but it's kind of about the how you actually set up and deliver the program that is kind of this spectrum. Most of the jobs that we have are somewhere in the middle of some combination of an integrated sort of model between our folks and the owner organization, or we bring in a pretty much a fully capable program management team embedded in the owner organization, and that's kind of the program management consultant led. And there are good reasons for making decisions along that spectrum based on the pros and cons. Sometimes I do an exercise and kind of taking people through a drill to kind of test what are the pros and cons and which ones are better. We don't have time for that today. But the reason I left the slide in is because, your intentionality on how you approach delivery model decisions, again, needs to be based on the overriding reason for the program. And your ultimate choice of this is how we're going to end up should be because that's what's best for the program, for achieving that outcome. And unfortunately, that is not the main reason that most of the delivery models in the industry were selected. It's because of an owner comfort zone. It's because of previous experience. And those aren't good enough reasons for how to set up that organization that needs to come together to deliver those huge outcomes. There have been attempts at coming up with more collaborative models. I mentioned the program delivery partner approach that, as far as I understand, 2012, I think was really the first, significant example of that. That term is now a hot term. Everybody wants to use it. We need a delivery partner. I get to travel around the world, and that term means something different on every continent. In Australia, that means a tier 1 contractor who I don't want to fight with. It's not like a significantly different construction contract. It just kind of means contract early engagement, and it's not anything like what happened on 2012 or kind of what it means here in the UK. The alliance approach, I think, was pretty revolutionary in showing that a deliberate approach to come up with a contracting method and an alignment between the owner, the engineer, and the constructor to put everybody on the same side of the rope, kind of pulling the task across the line with incentives and contractual mechanisms that would incentivize those sorts of behaviors. That was pretty unique. And, seeing that incorporated into NEC 4 compared to NEC 3, was a step of acknowledging that sort of an approach has real merit. Project 13 was amazing when it came out. I think most who have tried to implement that have found that it's, easier said than done. It's tough to do, to do all the things necessary to implement what truly looks like what that initial Project 13 paper said. And here it is, in real life. And so versions of that, have had some success, but it's still relevant and it's still being talked about because I think it's based on the right sort of concepts, again, of how you bring everybody together and drive alignment. I will end with kind of where I started, which is that it's about you. It's about people. Life is a team sport. Program management is a team sport. And not sure if any of you have read Jim Collins' book, From Good to Great, that kind of looked at companies and those that just really stood out in different industries, separate from the rest, that were great companies, and trying to analyze and look for the evidence of why. But I'll just tell you that the first chapter in his book is get the right people on the bus. It starts with the right people who kind of get it. And it's cool with me being here with you all because this is a room, just kind of getting coffee with you at the break. This is a room full of people who get it, who have that it factor. And that is priceless. That's way more valuable than any of the things we developed in the AECOM way. Any piece of technology we're developing is finding the right people who get it, and then getting them aligned is powerful. So just talk a little bit about people. So the people, at AECOM are driven by a number of things. These were the top 8 reasons. We got a 78%, highly satisfied sort of rating in our annual survey of our staff last year. These were the main reasons that kind of came to light as to why so much of the staff really like being there and being a part of the team. And you can kind of see things there that we talk about a lot in society that are important, and they feel like they're finding that it's exciting to be a part of a company that's dedicated to leading a collaborative work environment, a welcome workplace, flexible work arrangements, being a part of working with visionary clients and cool projects, is exciting. Valuing technical advancement, and the last one there, leaving an impact that does matter to us at AECOM. It's been an interesting organizational change management endeavor to embed a world-class program management business in a big engineering company, because it is different. As I mentioned, it's very different than true engineering. It's different even than project management. And so how you approach issues like technical excellence, we have a really strong technical excellence campaign and kind of ongoing program to make sure that all of our engineering is done in an excellent manner. That is different than how you do program management in an excellent manner. But it is something that you can tackle, that you can come up with standards, you can judge, whether or not the quality of our program management is actually excellent and world-class, that there is evidence. And so that's been a part of our journey in changing our company. This is kind of part of it, is having a very clearly defined career path now within AECOM for program managers, for project controls leaders, for program advisory leaders that didn't exist at AECOM 4 years ago. How we assess our capability and our skills development, all the training that we've developed to make sure that we're generating then the quality of the kind of folks that we want representing us. And then, the talent is always critical. So I'll end here with just a video of a handful of our folks just talking with you from around the globe of why they love doing what they're doing on our major programs.
Hi, I'm Cameron Tonkin, a member of ACOM's Global Program Management team. We're a growing team, but a close community passionate about excellence in program management. Program management in today's world is important because investments are getting bigger. The environment they take place in is getting more complex, and that requires excellence in program leadership, systems and processes, and next generation digital advancements in order to deliver the outcomes for clients, their customers, and the communities that we live. What I love about program management at ACOM is the importance of meeting urgent national needs that benefit our society and leave a lasting legacy for generations to come. The advice that I would give to anyone interested in a career in program management is get yourself a mentor, develop your skills through some learning and experience, and finally, be prepared to step out of your comfort zone by challenging yourself in your role. Get out there, be the best that you can be, and enjoy it. Thank you.
Program management is indispensable in today's fast-paced, ever-changing digital and AI-driven world. It ensures the efficient and effective execution of complex programs whilst maintaining competitiveness, adapting to changes, and achieving objectives. Our program management approach keeps ACOM at the forefront of the industry. What I find most rewarding about working on major programs is the collaboration with global and diverse teams, the challenge of complex problem solving, the satisfaction of achieving milestones, but most importantly, driving quality outcomes for our clients. These are all aspects that make program management for me exciting and fulfilling. My advice to anyone interested in a career in program management is to see its power. It's about driving impactful results, inspiring teams, and continuously learning. It's a dynamic field where you can shape the future, innovate, and make a real difference. So, are you ready to make a difference?
It's important in today's world that program management needs to help organizations quickly adapt as market shift, keep teams working efficiently together, and ensure everyone stays focused on what matters the most. In the age of big data, making informed decisions is more important than ever. We need to be ready to understand, anticipate, and adapt to the ever-changing needs of our clients. What I enjoy the most about working on major programs is the people. People make programs work. Collaborating with people from the client's team to suppliers, the entire supply chain with different backgrounds and skills, coming together, working together to operate as one to deliver a program that excites me. My advice to everyone who is interested in program management is, it's fun. Our AECOM approach to program management is outcome-focused, holistic, digitally enabled, and impactful. Beyond ensuring programs happen on time and on budget, we bring together multidisciplinary expertise to lead programs at scale. Don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. Make smart use of technology to facilitate proactive decision making. Take risks. Embrace diverse perspectives, backgrounds, and skills. Have an open mind and instill a solutions-focused approach.
Hi there, my name's Sue Kershaw. I'm Program Director for LA28, and that is the first complex integrator program we are delivering. And LA28 is obviously the Olympic and Paralympic Games, and it's a fantastic opportunity and privilege to be working on it. So people have asked me, why did I get into program management? And the reason I got into program management is I love difficult, gnarly, complex issues and programs, and I love delivering them. And that's why I'm here. And the major projects and programs really give you an opportunity to do something that's bigger than yourself and better, really, than you could ever be, because you're working with a group and a community of people. And what does program management do for the world? Well, actually, it makes the world a better place, really simply, for people and for everyone who exists on the planet. And, there couldn't be a better thing really to be involved with than that. They say doctors save lives, and I say people who build infrastructure provide the shelter for those people's lives and allow them to live. And then finally, careers advice, I would say really, from my perspective, I started off as a civil engineer, and I've managed in my career to work for a contractor, a consultant and a client, UK, overseas, small, large. So I've had a really good rounded view of our infrastructure world, and I would recommend to all of you that don't choose something too soon. Number one rule. Number two rule, really do something that gets you out of bed every morning and that you feel you've achieved something. It's just so meaningful. We all spend so many hours at work. They've got to be fun. So I wish you well, and welcome to anyone new who's joined program management. You're going to have a ball. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Asif Shafi, and I'm the Regional Business Line Leader for Program Management in the Middle East and Africa region. Program management gives you a framework to deliver some of the most complex and challenging projects. And the AECOM way of program management is an innovative approach that is transforming our industry. What excites me the most about program management is the sheer scale and legacy that these massive programs have. Whether it's delivering a major infrastructure project, or a rail or aviation program, or building new communities, these are all programs that will last a lifetime. If you're interested in program management, learn a little bit more about how AECOM delivers programs and get in touch with one of the members of our global program management community.
Well, thank you. I know that looked very scripted. I will tell you that it was less than 2 weeks ago that I said, my presentation looks good, but it's going to be really boring because it's just me talking. So let's see if we can get about 5 of our folks somewhere in the business to just do a 90-second video and just have them talk about what they do, talk about what they find rewarding about program management, and any advice. And they, I didn't even pick the people. My executive assistant came back and said, how about these 5? I said, perfect. I didn't say I want, 2 women. I want, the fact that they were all over the globe on like 4 different continents. This is just kind of representative, of our team and just the excitement of what we're doing along with you all in our industry. So thank you very much. I'll stop there, and I think we do have 10 minutes for some questions.
Well, I'm going to see you looking around desperately. Hi, Drew. Thank you very much for that. First of all, where do I sign?
It's exciting, isn't it? This is why I love my job.
Absolutely, yeah. But no, on to a serious question. You said in your presentation, clients are outcome driven. Your outcome sort of centric and building out from there. I work for a tier 1, so it's a sort of around that. But how are you seeing, or how are you able to influence the alignment of others in that value chain to also then be much more sort of outcome driven and less about the inputs or the projects, and how you manage that as a program manager or as a delivery partner?
Yeah. So good question, Tom. So when I mentioned we have a defined approach to initiation, there's a lot of it embedded in how we start. We do a lot of collaborative workshops. They kind of cascade out from our delivery team that is mobilized to our team with the client, as well as then bringing in members of the supply chain and starting to, start to work on this alignment, whether it's through chartering sessions, whether it's through other ways of kind of driving alignment and kind of doing a stakeholder mapping of all those who are kind of involved. It tends to be something that's almost more sociological and psychological than again, engineering. How do we drive alignment between different people from different perspectives and backgrounds and organizations who come at this from a different angle? But the alignment is, is absolutely critical. And so, we start an initiation and then keep driving it. Another part of it is the client journey. because these are, as Leanne said, transformations. They're change. It's not business as usual. It's not something that any client does every year or even every 5 years. It's something that they recognized is different, that they needed some help to kind of shape the approach to this, because it's not something that they could just do in their sleep. And so sometimes our clients don't realize that they are going to have to be a part of the change. They have to be willing to be like put on the operating table and actually you allowed to be kind of mess with and meddle with the client organization and their precious kind of traditions and governance and policy. But it's not like hiring an electrician that comes to your house and they disappear into the room where you wanted a new light installed and they come out an hour later and give you the bill and say it's done. This is something the client can't just step back from. They've got to be a part of the process, because I mentioned they can't delegate their role. As Nick said, there are things that are uniquely the infrastructure owner's job to make those decisions. And so they've got to come along with you through this transformation. And that requires change, organizational change on how they view things. And so that part is not easy, but it's absolutely critical. And it's something that we're constantly aware of. And, as we kind of step through setting up the program level stage gates, the approach to the project level stage gates, how you approach the governance to kind of continue to baby step our way through this process that everybody can come along together.
Hi, Drew.
Hi.
You sort of answered my question there. I work in a client organization, and my question was going to be about the people aspect in the client organization. So from your experience, what are the most sort of critical success factors that you see in client organizations maybe within the behavior space? What do you look for within a really successful client organization?
That's a great question. And it's actually starting to impact us as we look at what jobs we're even going to bid on. Because if our understanding of our client, prior to that program coming to market for a program management contract, a delivery partner contract, tells us that they don't get it and they're not necessarily going to be open to getting it, then we're starting to make decisions where we just won't try. We won't step into that space because we're not convinced that we can help that client be successful. If they're going to be so rigid in just kind of controlling everything and doing everything the way they've always done it, then we probably can't help them be successful if it's something that's really complex and very different. And so, as far as critical success factors, it's looking for those sorts of indicators that it's a client who is willing to be collaborative, a client who's willing to allow us to bring our expertise to the table. You wouldn't hire a dentist because of a toothache and then get in the dentist chair and say, no, wait a minute, use that tool over there that, you trust that, hey, I need a dentist because they have expertise that I don't have. And so, I want you to bring that expertise to kind of, and yet I'm sure many of you have been in a situation where kind of you've gone through a procurement process, but then there's kind of a tension you're not able to overcome in what everybody is kind of feels like they're best suited to help do, and it coming together as a team.
Drew, thanks very much for a very informative presentation.
Yeah, Neil.
The balance between corporate and personal development and the getting the job done in a very client-facing project delivery world, how do you balance and encourage the team to maintain the right balance at the right time so that you can make that transformative change that the business has been through, individuals are going through, whilst also serving what is often a firefighting need into day job delivery?
It's really important. And that's why, I deliberately kind of started and ended with the people piece of this. Because at the end of the day, these jobs aren't billed by CVs. We've got lots of people in the industry with really impressive experience and qualifications. But at the end of the day, this stuff is done by people who come together and, kind of lock arms and work on really tough, hairy, as gnarly as Sue said, challenges that when you start, you're not even sure exactly what the solution looks like. But you figure it out together. You have confidence. You have enough expertise and the right brain power in the room to kind of work it out together. But But I think that all of us as leaders, have got to constantly not be disconnected from our humanity. And that we, every day and in all aspects of kind of how we conduct ourselves, even in the toughest, commercial negotiation or whatever it is, are constantly letting folks know in the room that, but, at the end of the day, we're all people. My team knows that if they want me to kind of keep a smile on my face, I've got to be booked in hotels that have a gym so I can start my day in the gym. And, I normally need to be home on Fridays for my haircut. The one thing that I kept from the military. And if I have my haircut and my gym time, then I don't need sleep. I don't need, food. I can deal with all the stress, but we're all different, and we all have those needs, our mental health is really important. We will openly admit that we're working with a personal trainer in the gym to kind of lose a little bit of weight or to kind of get more fit. But we're not as open about saying, hey, listen, I've been seeing a counselor for the last year. I did that with my team. I said, hey, listen, the last year I've been seeing a counselor and it's been awesome. I've learned things about myself that I just didn't even think about before. And, I want to be mentally well as physically well, so that I can bring my best. And it's important for us to I think model those sorts of behaviors, that it's not just some slogan on a website. It's how we conduct ourselves, how we live our life. Whether you're really a people person or not, you can be genuine and come across in a way that people, realize they can connect with you and work with you and, help build that team together.
Me next? Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks, Drew. That was really fantastic. I really enjoyed that. And it was nice to hear, but I was one of the co-authors of the paper that you mentioned.
Awesome paper. I have it almost memorized.
But one of the things we sort of mention in the paper is about integration and the role of an integrator.
Yes.
And I found it fascinating that you said that your vision is to be a complex integrator rather than a program manager, even though program management has been the thing that's led you to success in many ways. And then hearing from Sue saying that, the LA 28 is one of the first big, examples of that role. I just wondered why you've chosen that. Why that role? Why do you call it that role compared to program management?
It's a really good question. And our executive leadership team at AECOM, we made the decision 2 years ago that was our destiny, which was really satisfying for me because I'm sitting around our corporate executive leadership team table with all the business line chief execs, the 7 regional chief execs in the C-suite. And it was a part of our strategy development cycle. And they kind of asked a survey of all of those members, who do you see us as today? And then who do you think we need to be 10 years from now? And overwhelmingly, they all said, today, 70% of what we do, 75% is in that first column of kind of design and technical consultant. But in the future, that needs to be about 30%, and we need to be about 50%, this complex integrator, and about 25% advisor. And, I didn't even have to push that or sell that as the guy who's been trying to push program management within AECOM for the last 4 years. That was their view. And because I think they get it, and it was the CEO's vision, but we kind of chose that term because we think that it's a little bit provocative and open-ended in allowing for the fact that the world is changing every day faster than it's ever changed before, and it's getting more and more complex, more and more intersectional. And what the need of the integrator in this ever-changing and growingly complex, world is going to become more and more important. During the pandemic year, the Engineering News Record article on the top 50 program management firms that came out in June of 2020, said that, we're experiencing in all of their categories a real downturn in engineering services because of the pandemic. But this particular category is something that owners more than ever need a program manager because they have bigger questions than ever before that they need to answer on how to approach their future. And I think, selecting complex integrator is almost like us saying, like the cell phone. When it first started it was a cell phone, and I still had my Razor kind of flip phone, and my BlackBerry, with all the keys, trying to type the one letter at a time kind of thing. But I kind of see that as program management today and how we view program management. And as choosing complex integrator is that we're kind of seeing that the future version of this will be the iPhone. It'll be something that you barely use as a phone. You use it for everything else in life, but you barely use it as a phone. And so yes, choosing that term was appreciating that integration of taking all these complex parts of life and pulling them together to be able to produce still single outcomes. That part won't change. Nick talked a lot about integrators, at IGA.
Thank you very much for this very inspiring presentation, as it gives us also an understanding of how an organization can look like, that delivers and has a purpose, and obviously translate the purpose into the projects. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I see the link very clearly, and I think this is one of the issues that organizations need to look for, because if the organization provides a purpose, that means also that you might be easier to attract people.
True.
Yeah, that look
True.
for purpose.
Yes.
And for me, the question therefore is, and I think it's maybe a question that cannot be answered that easily. Yeah. So what people are you looking for? I mean, of course, there's absolutely diversity, and I understand that you're looking for diversity because they will also bring different competences with them and different expertise. But what type of people you would like to attract?
Juliana and I talked about this Friday night at dinner, because I haven't really thought about a really good specific answer to that tough question. I think I've kind of chalked it up to kind of like that it factor. Every person that's on my global team is about 35 folks, and every single person on that team I personally interviewed, even if they were 2 or 3 levels down. And I still, for that whole team, even though we're much bigger than when we started, I meet on a regular basis with every single person on that team on some regular basis, even if it's just, once every 6 months, or that I need to have a 30-minute conversation with every person on that team, at least on some regular basis, because, the connection with that person is really important, even as we go on a journey together, that I'm getting real feedback, that I'm making sure they're okay, that I make it clear that I'm accountable to them as much as they are, are to me, is really important to us being a high-performing team. And so I'm looking then for, the people who I can see fitting into, who have that same sense of purpose, and have values that are aligned, that the culture that we're continuing to create is something that we all value. Everybody doesn't have to look at it the same way. And we definitely don't want everybody to have to kind of look alike or agree on everything. That's horrible. My first year, we were up to about 12 people, and we were having our first team meeting together in 2021 here in London. And I had heard that there were some arguments between parts of the team as it was growing. And I made him read this book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. And we got in there, and I said, it's good to have you all in the same room, post-pandemic here, finally we're all together. But, I'm hearing that there's kind of like some arguments between the team. And the room got really quiet. And I said, there better be arguments between this team. we will definitely never be a high-performing team if we're not disagreeing. All of you are so different. You all have such different backgrounds. If you're not bringing that to the table and us having a trusting environment where people are not taking it personally, the fact that we significantly disagree about the best way, then we'll never arrive at optimal solutions. We'll never be a high-performing team. We'll be a bunch of polite people with pretend trust, and, we'll kind of meander through life, And so, looking for that kind of textural quality of the people, in addition to a good CV. But CVs are so partial these days. You interview a young person with a short CV, maybe they haven't done something that some of us older people who've been around forever have been, but they may be the absolute right person, and the CV doesn't tell you the thing that you better have them on your team because they're brilliant. They're going to make you so much better. And so, yeah, I got to have some contact and come to trust your gut a little bit. Thank you, though. Thank you. Thank you so much.